TravelClick, the world's leading provider of business intelligence for hoteliers, is pleased to bring you Demand 360, the only market intelligence tool that provides complete forward-looking data for you and your competitors. Built on TravelClick's proprietary business intelligence platform, Hotelligence 360, Demand 360 presents all booking data from participating hotels' property management systems. Demand 360 is used by thousands of hotels worldwide, including top hotel chains and many independent hotels. We talk to hotel revenue managers every day, and we know what information you need to drive your business. With Demand 360, you can identify when you're behind in booking retail business and need to reduce your discount offers to drive ADR. Also, Demand 360 allows you to make holistic marketing decisions and ensure a strong channel mix to drive ROI. Demand 360 enables more informed decision-making by understanding the group compression in your market. Only Demand 360 provides you with forward-looking data and historical information with ADR on thousands of hotels worldwide. Contact us today about Demand 360, one of TravelClick's many proven solutions that optimize performance, grow revenue, and create stronger brands.
È stato direttore e creatore della piattaforma Yield Solution, oggi è co-founder e CEO di SnapShot, un'azienda specializzata nei big data del settore alberghiero, il Chief Operating Officer e co-founder di SnapShot, David Turnbull.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for staying till the very end, to 4 p.m. You want me to come forward? Okay, but then I don't see my slides. Okay. Can I move the chairs back a little bit? Thank you. So my name is David Turnbull. I'm the co-founder of SnapShot. We're a startup in the hotel data space. We're trying to make big data smaller for hotels. So when Giancarlo invited me to come and speak to you today, I was fascinated by the title, The King of Pain, in combination with a conversation about distribution and implied the pain of OTAs. Because I disagree fundamentally with that statement. And I think that as hotels, we have to take more ownership for our own houses. And a lot of the issues that hotels are facing today come back to the way that we set up our own technology infrastructure. So what I'd like to do before we kind of bring on the panel to kind of talk about distribution and OTAs is take you through some thoughts that I've kind of put together today. Out of interest, how many hoteliers do we have in the room today? If you could put up your hands to show me. How many hoteliers do we have? I'd like to see 3 hands, so 4 hands. That's basically the problem that we have in the industry is education. That we don't have enough people actually going out there and working out why it is that we can complain about the OTAs and say that the OTAs is the bad guy without actually looking at the bigger picture. So in the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, and really the kind of point that I'd like to make is that OTAs have this singular focus. Everything they do is based on putting the consumer at the center of everything and focused on selling a wide travel experience. And I think that if you see this next slide, you'll recognize that the shift has been from technology empowering companies through to technology now empowering the consumer. And really, this is, I think, if you look at this sort of the news that's come out in the last couple of weeks with Starwood and Marriott, that this sort of awakening of the data economy is really what is driving a lot of this. And fundamentally, who owns the consumer? And underneath that, who owns the data? But it's not all bad news. Because ultimately, consumers want to be treated in a very special way. They want to be treated like royalty. And this is where hotels and hotel companies have that kind of fundamental opportunity to set a new course for themselves, which is by employing technology that delivers that entire experience. We all want to be treated like a celebrity, like a royalty. And so what I'm going to take you through in my presentation today is really kind of focused on opportunities to get our house in order. As a data company, we get asked the question a lot, what does big data mean for hotels? And this is a meme that my company created, was very successful. And data is like water. The world is covered in it, but only 3% of it is currently usable. And I liken this to data poverty. And my concern for the hospitality industry is that if we continue at the current pace, we will never be able to outstrip the intermediaries that deliver reservations to our businesses because we simply don't have our technology landscapes together. I saw a lot of faces smiling as you saw this slide, and if you are in a hotel and you've seen this within your revenue or your reservations or your sales office, whilst it's amusing, it's actually a serious concern that the solution is to order a second monitor. So I call big data is what you call data when it becomes hard to deal with. And of course, people are now commenting on the fact that the amount of data is significantly increasing. And so, of course, the next point is obvious that big data is just data that is too big for your computer. I think the distinguishing point here is that when we talk about big data within hospitality, we get a blur between big data, business intelligence, data visualization, data aggregation, but there is a fundamental focus always on looking backwards. And if we come back to this point about how hotels can take a new direction, it's actually to recognize that analytics in particular is not just based on retrospective analysis, but it's also about looking forward as well. And this is where I really think that we've got a great opportunity. So big data is not just about these huge warehouses, these huge lakes of data, but more than any OTA, what we're able to capture is so much about the raging torrents of live data that we're able to collect in all of our different interactions with our consumer. Forget about just the booking points. I'm talking from the moment that they arrive in the hotel. So when we compare these kind of data warehouses, these data lakes, to this new, let's say, approach to streaming analytics, we can start to think about things as simple as placing sensors throughout our hotel. so that front office, operations, housekeeping get real-time information on, does the bathroom need to have another change? A cleaning operation sent into it because 50 people have opened the door in the last 60 minutes. That's just one example of how we can take kind of real-time data and sort of improve the experience and the quality that we deliver. And that's ultimately what all of this is pointing back to. We're never going to be able to beat the OTAs, but we can continue to strive for superior service, for superior excellence and experience throughout the entire stay. So this live data is something that is referred to as perishable insights. And there is no industry better than hospitality in terms of actually generating these insights. It's whether we have a technology infrastructure that would allow us to capture them. So what do you do when you have a problem that you can't solve? Of course, you delegate it. And the problem that we have at the moment in hospitality is that the cloud is a great example of this, right? So of course, we just assume that this becomes someone else's problem. And this is really the approach that we need to take, which is to kind of own the strategy. Why would we want to shift our business into the cloud? What is fundamentally driving it? And if we're not able to beat them in terms of the sales side, then of course we've got to shift to the overall customer experience itself. Essentially, what value can we create from this? Does anyone know who this gentleman is? Abraham Maslow, creator of the hierarchy of needs. And if you'll forgive me the slight sort of analogy here, I would kind of almost point out that data has human needs too. It's just that he probably never said this, but let's put this into a little bit more context. So if we put it this way, we have collection, we have the storage, we have the analysis of the data, and then leading through to the prediction and the decisions that are made. And again, if I keep on hammering the point, this is where we have an issue within hospitality. There's a great quote from the former CEO of Napster who said, if you've got data, then let's use it, and if we haven't, then let's go with my opinion. And that's a kind of an issue that we have in particular within hotels, because if you look at this analogy here, at the moment, so much of the decision-making in hotels is done by the human, and as we know, humans are not exactly rational when it comes to making fast, frequent decisions. So this communication breakdown typically tends to occur when the hotelier or when the user, when the human has to make a manual decision about predicting something or the final decision itself. I use an example like dynamic pricing. If ever there was a greater oxymoron in our industry, it's that term dynamic pricing. Hotels that set up for one segment, transient, 20 different rate levels, and then manually only ever apply 3 or 4 of those because they simply don't have time to evaluate, predict, and make decisions based on that. So that's ultimately what goes on, is that whilst we're able to collect, store, and potentially analyze the data, when it comes to that prediction, we tend to fail. Ultimately, data-driven decisions really should be fully automated. And when it comes to something like pricing, as a person who comes from a revenue and distribution background, I fundamentally stand by that. The days of revenue managers and e-commerce managers need to kind of be pushed away and handed over to data scientists and neuro-marketeers. So when we think about this kind of approach to automation, I'm sure that you're familiar with Moravec's paradox, this notion that there are some things that are hard for a computer to do that are easy for a human, and vice versa, easy for a human and hard for a computer. So let me do a little experiment with you. I'm going to show you 2 slides of numbers, and I'd like you to tell me the sum of those the sum of the even numbers that you see. So what was the answer? Anyone? Sorry? Almost, 372. So that's just to kind of prove the point, which is that why would we give something as repetitive as price changes within a hotel over to a human who is actually required to do 15 other decisions per day non-related to price? Why, when we look at the bigger picture of revenue management, where at least 70% of the decision is inventory management, would we be frightened to automate the pricing model itself? So ultimately, it'd be easier if we just had fewer decisions to make. This is a great quote from Daniel Suskind. I feel deeply uncomfortable with that, but it may be that for some tasks, machines can make these decisions more effectively and efficiently. They're not just faster and cheaper, but they're ultimately better at making these decisions. I'm sure you all know the story about Garry Kasparov when he lost the chess game to Deep Blue. What's very interesting is what happened after that, and when he became obsessed that it wasn't the computer that had beaten him, but that there was a team of chess players behind the computer, 7 or 8 people, all telling the computer what to do. And so he even started to kind of conduct research with a gentleman called R.J. Linklater into this very kind of subject of the gestalt, the mix between the human and the computer and the power that that could deploy. You can actually give this a terminology, which is that the best chess players in the world are centaurs, amalgamations, teams of humans and algorithms. And I really see this as being kind of the first opportunity where hotel companies, be they independent, be they smaller groups through to large chains, need to kind of herald in a new era where data scientists in particular are brought in to start to kind of work in an efficient way with our data. X.AI is a great example of Amy, my new PA, who since about 3 weeks has been coordinating all of my appointments and schedules. And this kind of interaction between human and artificial intelligence is just one great example of kind of the types of decisions that can be automated. I guess what's scary is that more than 40% of actions are actually, they're not decisions at all. They're just pure habit. So, I mean, I think we can officially declare that it is time to freak out. But in terms of hospitality, there is some good news. The first results from the robot hotel in Japan have come through, and room service hasn't worked very well. So they've gone back to the drawing board a little bit on this one, but that could come out in early 2016. So let's take a look at this hotel conundrum. What I've implied in this presentation is a great quote from David McCandless. A few years back at a TEDx conference, took a twist on the term data is the new oil and referred to it as data is the new soil. And in effect, what he was implying is that, you know, if we empower the individual, not the big corporation, but the individual user to make creative decisions, that we create an entire new landscape. And this is fascinating, but within hospitality, we've just got so far to go. We're a technical desert at the moment. And I've sat through this afternoon listening to Philip in particular, and I kind of at the start of this presentation just wanted to go, what he said, what he said, what he said. And this is ultimately our problem at the moment, is that we place so much emphasis on what we know as our hotel management system of the past. And clearly we're not equipped, if we want to move into this data economy, to have such expectations. That's no criticism, it's just the reality of the changing landscape if we want to be active in this data economy. This, by the way, is a live example from a senior management team of a hotel group in Europe with 60 hotels that took 3 hours to draw their technology infrastructure. 3 hours to work out every piece of software that they employ, the relationships and interfaces between those. So when my CMO of SnapShot started about 9 months ago, he was looking at this, this drawing saying, this is crazy. This is crazy that we have such complexity within our landscape. And so we set about, from an education point of view, within our own company, trying to help all of the developers that we brought on board in the last 12 months. We have 80 developers across Gliwice, Brno, and Sofia who don't come from a hotel background, who just kept coming back to this question of why is there so much dependence on this operating system? So we rebuilt the technology and distribution landscape with great success and great understanding, and this still comes back to this point about education. So I know that it's a big buzzword. We've been talking about this for 2 years, but there's just simply so much friction. Without kind of making this sound like a sales presentation, but we've got to get more focused on that consolidation and aggregation of data and eliminate those pains, those friction points, and start to take ownership. Don't complain about rising cost of distribution if you don't have your own house in order. So my background is that before I founded SnapShot, I ran a farm of revenue managers based in Berlin, Germany. And we did outsource revenue management for many hotel companies. One of the first was CitizenM, a very interesting decision that a new brand would outsource its revenue management. And we were given a very simple brief, which is that 100% of reservations would be digital, and that every reservation has a cost of sale. And that was in 2007. And that makes life very easy for my team, because fundamentally they stopped being revenue managers and were converted into managers of demand, responsible for both the generation and the optimization of demand, because there were no salespeople. There were no agreements. There was no giving away your inventory 12 months in advance, 70% of it, to contracts that may or may not produce. So that was a significant game changer. This is their technology infrastructure as it was 2 years ago. And you can see that there is a kind of a clear distinction between the operational data center at the hotel and a lot of dependency on that cloud-based, new age, new wave property management system. And that structure was in place from 2008. In the last 18 months, however, with this growing recognition that ownership of the data and ownership of the consumer is fundamentally the driving point of their strategy, and delivering phenomenal guest experience at every single touch point, they had to rip apart their entire landscape of technology and reclaim the ownership. And to do that, they set up a relatively simple service bus infrastructure or architecture, which separates between all of the consumer-related data hosted in their own cloud environment, all technology vendors required to have the relevant API to support that infrastructure, with a direct connection back into a local service bus environment where real-time data, that streaming analytics that we talked about, where that focus on perishable insights means that if a TV breaks down in the room, that the ambassadors are picking up the phone to the guests saying, shall I come up just now or later to help you with that problem? That's real guest experience, and that's the reason why people will come back and back and back and keep booking directly through your brand.com website, giving them a complete 360 experience. So, in terms of takeaways, I don't believe for 1 minute that I can expect you to set up a service bus. But I would ask you, and I hate to use this, but keep calm and focus on curating your data. And that sounds very kind of big data-esque in its approach, but it really isn't. I hope you can read this, but if you're not already, be obsessed about bringing together and organizing all of your internal system or performance data. We need to move beyond the Excel sheets and recognize that we have financial, profile, and reservation transactions that we take the ownership of. We need to enrich this with our own intelligence from budget sheets, forecast sheets. Every price change, every commission override, every stay restriction deployed is meaningful intelligence if it's collected and harvested in the right way. And finally, and this sounds like a recipe that I'm giving you, enrich it with existing market intelligence. So, as a piece of homework, as a takeaway, I would ask you to do this. Pick one stay date and go back 90 days and collect every single piece of information that you have about that stay date, related to customer profiles, reservation transactions, and financial transactions. And then enrich that with all of the user-generated intelligence and market intelligence that you can get. Just go through that process for one date and collect all of that data. And then, with or without a data scientist, just analyze the hell out of it. Our issue is that we try to kind of predict outcomes in advance and then force the models to go in a predetermined way. And the beauty of data science is that we do the complete opposite approach. We analyze the hell out of the data and we try to interpret patterns in that. So, data is the new soil, and we have this great creative opportunity to empower individuals. This is within reach. If we stake a claim to our data, if we understand fundamentally who our customer is, what their needs are, from a brand point of view, what kind of service expectations do we want to provide? Otherwise, the future looks like this. Thanks very much for your time, and I look forward to speaking with the panel.
Thank you. Just let's move, before I call your talk back on stage, just move a little more on the light, and then we're ready. So let's call the talk back for this panel. First, in Italian of course. Da quasi 20 anni è il presidente di TravelClick. Prima di entrare in TravelClick, Ian è stato direttore per Hyatt International, dove ha supervisionato le prenotazioni alberghiere di tutto il mondo, il revenue e la distribuzione. È il presidente di TravelClick International, Tissera.
Thank you.
Jean-Luc è approdato in Accor nel 1986 in qualità di responsabile marketing e vendite del settore alberghiero, successivamente per Accor Pacific e nel 1990 per la divisione del turismo leisure. Negli anni ha ricoperto l'incarico di Executive Vice President of Hotel Distribution, di Marketing Director per gli hotel di Euro Disney e di Head of Distribution Strategy. Jean-Luc ricopre oggi il ruolo di Executive Vice President of Marketing and Distribution presso Accor Hotels. Jean-Luc Chretien.
Gentlemen,
Io vi aspetto
How are you?
sotto.
I didn't
Hi,
mention
Jean-Luc.
TravelClick.
So David, we went through this big data, all of that. Do you think all hotels should be employing a nerd now? Re-engineering their sales departments and employing a nerd to look through all the data to be able to give them the decisions that they need to make?
I hope the point of the presentation was to explain that that should be the approach if you have the data set up in the right way. And that's the bigger issue that we have, is that sort of fundamental education and understanding about how to bring that data together in the first place, how it should be stored, how it should be curated. And that's, I think, fundamentally the issue that we have at the moment.
So the hotel industry is pretty backward in taking all this data and making use of it intelligently.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I think the fragmentation here in Europe, in particular on the hotel side, coupled on the technology side as well, doesn't help matters. We've seen 2 CRS companies now merge in the last couple of weeks, which is an indicator of, let's say, time to head for greater consolidation. greater consolidation, from my perspective, is actually good for independent hotels. So yeah, that's ultimately where we need to move forward, is to remove that friction and fragmentation.
Actually, you stole my question, but I understand what you say and what you presented, and of course, hotel group like Accor Hotels are, of course, very strongly investing behind data, and we actually created a new department to handle all the data platform. We are talking about data lakes and building all the infrastructure to do everything that you said. Of course, we work with partners for that. But the hotel industry is also, and now it's part also of my responsibilities to deal with these problems, there's also a lot of small hotels, small hoteliers in cities like Florence, 40, 60 rooms hotels. And in your opinion, it's different treatment. Of course, they need to analyze data as well. But I would say, what is the, in your opinion, the kind of things that we need to tell such hotels, because we are dealing with them also as big groups for franchises, for instance, in terms of what is the priority of the data that they need to use or they need to collect. And in your opinion, what is the cost, because it all becomes also an issue with cost for an hoteliers, where it needs to invest behind that intelligence or that kind of system.
It's a great question.
Just give you an example, because you mentioned CitizenM, which is a chain. It's not that big,
Sure.
but I guess you had in mind also how much per hotel that can cost, or what is the leverage that you can get out of this. So it's always related to what is the cost of using data versus the benefits. And at one point, these systems, what you mentioned, and all these activities have a cost.
Yeah.
These guys don't have a lot of staff, so they need to use outside companies. But to which extent it's probably an investment. But what, in your experience, how can we measure that?
Okay. Great question, and let's stick with that example of that. That's a 60-bedroom hotel in the middle of the city center, somewhere in a capital city in Europe.
Yep.
And then you ask them, what segments do you go after? And they tell you, oh, well, transient and corporate and group and meetings and weddings. And really? You're 80 rooms in the city center of Paris, London, and you need to go after so many segments? So this comes back to my point earlier of be fundamentally clear about who your customer is and build everything around delivering the most exceptional service to a much smaller segment of customer. That would be the advice that I would be giving to the majority of these hoteliers. We're trying too hard. We're busy fools in the way. We're crowd pleasers. We're trying to achieve everything instead of having that ruthless, singular focus. And I think when you have that fundamental understanding of who your customer is, the technology infrastructure, the service delivery around it, all of that comes together. Try to achieve too much, and you end up with chaos.
Okay.
I have the microphone. Here I am. I have a few questions for everyone. I think Philip as well has some questions. But I will start with Jean-Luc. Let's say last week during the Focusrite conference in the US, we saw your CEO, Sébastien Bazin, who did, I have to say, he did a phenomenal speech. Probably was also a patriot speech, because it was immediately after to what happened in Paris. It was just coming in Paris the day after everything what happened. But he did he said a few very interesting things. I'm gonna read one. He said, 90% of the decisions are in the hands of people like me, who are more than 50 years old. It won't work because those under 35 have a much better view of what the market needs tomorrow. I don't give them autonomy, and they need breathing room oxygen. The two populations don't listen to each other. This means that what's happening in Accor? It's a revolution going on.
No, first of all, I will tell you what Philip Wolff told him when he says that. He said, you know, I'm above 50, which I am too, and I feel a lot more connected and understandable, and I understand better the digital activities than many of these young people. So it's not a question of age. But to answer your question, I think what Sébastien is telling us, it's not a question of age, but it's fundamentally for hoteliers, and I think both inside Accor and other groups probably the same, but also what I can see in the hotel industry, it's all these changes that come with such a dramatic and speed and transformation that we cannot rely now anymore on the reflex, the analysis of the recipes of the past. So definitely we need to look at things a totally different way. And what he says by saying, you know, people under 50 or people in their 30s, it meant by the people who are now born with a digital age have a better understanding of how we can use this and have a different way of bringing response. Which then, to answer the last part of your question, is inside Accor, the main focus that is driving is a transformation, is change management. We have to bring, I would say, 3,700 general managers into a different way of looking at their business. Of course, the fundamentals of this hospitality, and you've seen the movie, we always claim that we are hospitality because we say feel welcome, we are welcoming guests. And I think the previous person said the customers, they don't care about them, they care about their needs. So our job is still to cater for the needs of our travelers. But the way the travelers behave, the way they are expecting a number of things to be delivered has changed. And therefore we need to bring our GMs to understand that, how they can use the data to be better hosts, how they can use their data and the technology to bring and deliver a better experience, etc., etc. So the key, there are two elements which are very important for an hotel company these days, is how to adapt to technology and investment, and that's what Sébastien has launched a year ago with a big digital plan and a big investment, and I came last year to talk about that. But the second one is how we transform our people.
I have a 59-year-old question. Well, the question is young. It comes from a 59-year-old. For all three of you, is it still reasonable to expect a small or medium-sized hotel to be excellent at service and hospitality on the one hand, and all the technical things we need to do from data integration, technology, reservations, acquisitions, conversions, SEO, SEM, or is it time to move on to some other mindset that nobody is comfortable saying? Jan, you get to go first because you're the...
So the issue is, you know, these smaller hotels should outsource all the technology aspects to companies around the room here, companies in the hall, etc., etc. That's not their expertise. These smaller hotels have to create this experience and customization that is needed.
So let's go with that. But even outsourcing all of these skills, they don't know what all the skills are. They don't know what all the companies are, who provides them, where they're located, what they cost, and how to evaluate and analyze A, B, and C for each of 22 different things. So that's what I'm trying, like, what's the reality, not the hypothetical?
Well, I think it's a judgment on our side to think that they don't know this stuff.
Okay,
And the millennials coming up, the empowerment in the hotel industry is shocking. Okay, yeah. It's controlled at a hierarchy that never gets down to letting the people at the front desk or letting the people who take calls on the phone, that empowerment to make the decisions, to understand, you know, what levels of service they can actually give to the customer.
Anybody else?
I see several things in your questions. First of all, underneath, wouldn't it be better for an hotel to concentrate on hospitality and leave this kind of activities to somebody like Booking? This is exactly what Booking.com is telling
or
hoteliers.
A brand or
no,
something.
That's what Booking.com is telling hoteliers. I'm going to have the same answers as I had last year, is no. Yes, Booking is useful, can bring, but hoteliers should think about the capacity that they have as well to stay hoteliers, but also to use other partners to be able to deliver and to understand how to get these guests to go online, how to have a better website, a better booking engine, the capacity to develop the marketing services. So they need to educate themselves, they need to change. And when you say it's not happening, it is happening. this kind of event is a proof that we are trying to do that. Yeah. Last week I was in a city of France, 500 independent hoteliers representing thousands of independent hotels were gathering in a conference, and they were exposed to people explaining to them, this is what you need to do to be able to deliver and to access the web. This is the kind of, you need a good booking engine. There are suppliers around, but this is the fundamentals that you need to have now. And I think these hoteliers start to understand that it's not like before. They have to work on it. They have to learn some of these, understand what are the rules of engagement and how they can use that. But a lot of companies now are providing these services, and it's a matter of choosing the right one at the right cost. But I think this is happening these days. And of course, always the same thing. OTAs can be very useful. They have opened our eyes. They need to do that. The main thing we need to be careful is that we make sure that we don't depend so much to them that, yes, we will welcome guests, but we will become a commodity for the guest because he will always choose what they tell him to choose with their algorithm. And that's not what we want to happen.
I think there's two angles to this. One is the fragmentation within the technology landscape. Booking.com claims to have around 800,000 accommodation listings. The largest B2B technology providers got 40,000 B2B installations. So I think that fragmentation with the industry is one of the biggest issues that we have, in particular here in Europe. Second point, we as technology vendors have a responsibility to change the model and how we work with hotels. If this is a partnership, and it's a two-way partnership, we've got to deliver that value that I was referring to back to the hotels. We've got to be part of the education process as well. This isn't the case of trying to beat the OTAs. We're going to always have them within our business model, but we need to give the hotels...
Are you technology vendors doing that, or are you not doing it and you should do it? I never know what to...
I think if you look at the new wave that's coming out, that the legacy model of interface infrastructure and the models that go around that are starting to break apart. So the grassroots are there, but it needs the hotels themselves to demand this. Yeah. It's a two-way thing.
Giancarlo, should we go to the experts?
Yeah, we have one question from Alessio.
Do you hear me? Yeah, still Alessio Iacona here. This is a question from Mr. Turnbull. I really appreciate your speech. It was clear, and I understood a lot of things better than I did before. Just when you said go back 90 days, find just one arrival and examine, try to find out every data about that, work on it, analyze the heck out of it. This puts on the table a question, I mean, who's the owner of the data? I mean...
that's part of the homework, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Who owns the data?
Mainly, I don't think that the independent hotels and hotels do have that information. The data belongs to, right now, probably belongs to the a system supplier or a system aggregator and so on. So it's not that simple, I mean. Is that a problem, and how do we face them? For everyone. Thank you.
No, I don't think so, but I don't think it's a problem. It's first of all the data related to the booking, and I think you mentioned all the data related to an arrival date that we get from the guest is the property of the hotel. Of course, we need to. There are all sorts of laws on the way we can use it to talk to the customer, but apart from that, for the analytical reasons, it's data which belong to the hotel. There are always things that the hotel can have. Yes, you always find the odd situation where the hotel has nothing and still work on a piece of paper and maybe a few things, but in reality, there are lots of data that exist, especially related to the bookings. It's a matter of using that. Then you have two types of things. You have the data that you can analyze to project yourself and understand what your demand will be or what your trends will be, and then you can be, like David said, be selective and not try to, most of these hotels, they are scared to be empty, so therefore they multiply the channels to have as much business as possible, and they say it's better to have an overflow of water and then be able to turn off the tap than risking to be a drought and I don't have enough customers. And I think the data can help them understand what are the trends, where they are, and there are a number of things that you can access for this. The second thing, which is important and where they can do that, and some do it very well, is the customer information that they can use prior to our arrival to do a personalized experience, a good understanding of who the customer is, and therefore making sure when he arrives, he feels that he's waited for, is kind of recognized, and there are information about and attentions in his stay that will make him feel different and feel recognized, and for which he will build the attachment to the hotel, a much stronger attachment to the hotel. So I think this can happen, yes.
Transactional data and profile data.
Yeah, exactly.
Transactional, future-looking demand to set rates, and profile data for servicing the customer.
I have a couple of questions for Jan. The first one is what you really think about the Accor move. I mean, you think they will become an OTA? What step was that? Then I will ask Jean-Luc, of course, what they're doing, but I want the opinion of something which is out of it.
Accor, you know, they're brave and bold, and I think it's a good step. The more entrants we have in the distribution world, bringing extra demand into hotels, I'm all for it. So it was a brave, bold move, and I hope Accor hotels are successful in that. Opportunistically, I think companies like us can also make use of aspects of what they've done. We're in a very lucky time, you know, to run a hotel and to be a hotelier during this time with all the opportunities of distribution to fill your hotel, I think is fantastic. We just have to re-engineer what we do in a very traditional sense, have a sales organization of 5-10 people calling different industries, trying to influence bookings, when all the bookings are really being influenced electronically in a whole different manner. We have to get over that. You know, whether it's a small hotel in a city or if it's a chain that has, you know, 25, 30, 40 salespeople, what are they actually doing? Are they having coffee with some of the clients?
And none of those costs sit accurately in the P&L.
Absolutely.
Because the commission line keeps getting higher and higher because the change in channel mix, but all of that sales, labor cost, travel, expenses, entertainment, all of this is cost of acquisition. Hosting fees, SEO, SEM. So we're never comparing apples and apples, we're always comparing apples and pears. So the need for transactional data is essential, because you want to attach all fixed and variable costs and really start talking about profit per available room. This is the kind of data that hotels need. We don't have that within our existing setup.
Right. Jean-Luc, I'm an independent hotel now. I'm here, I'm an independent hotel. You have to convince me to join the new Accor system.
First of all, two comments. With Jan and TravelClick, it's both my supplier as Accor Hotels, because we use some of their products.
Sure.
And now with fast booking, we are competing to a certain extent, but we can also cooperate on the marketplace project. And I think Philippe mentioned it at one stage, things are changing, and this is also what Sébastien said. Competition, cooperations, whatever, we have to move the lines. One of the big things regarding OTAs, what fundamentally OTAs do is good. What is the problem is their dominance. In order to be less dominant, one of the things which is missing in the hotel industry, because it's so fragmented, is cooperation. So when he asked us to think differently, we came with a marketplace concept. First of all, the marketplace concept, we are not an OTA. I'm not trying to attract lots of hotels to compete with Booking and manage these hotels the same way Booking does. Basically what we say, and it's in line also, we're enriching each other. We can learn from the independent hotels, and they can learn from Accor to become, and as Philippe was mentioning as well, learning more about how we can be better on the web, better exposed and more efficient on the web. So what is the marketplace? AccorHotel.com is a big store. 180 million visitors a year, generating a huge 11 1.1 billion euros worth of revenue for Accor. So we have all these visitors. On the other hand, our store lacks inventory, not inventory, lacks destination. We don't have enough hotels to attract more visitors and more attendants. If someone wants to go to Japan or wants to go to some cities in Italy, Accor doesn't have hotels. We have 70 hotels in Italy. This is nothing. Italy is a big demand, a big destination. If I want to be attractive for people wanting to visit Italy, I need to have 200, 300 hotels in Italy. So the deal is, you come on my platform, you benefit from all the visitors that we have, you benefit from the expertise of Accor and the conversion ratio that we have, and I will deliver you some bookings that you won't have to buy or to get from an OTA at a lower cost. So I'm providing you an extra, an additional distribution channel. By reaction, what I get from you is that if I have many independent hotels on my platform, I will have more visitors, and we studied this also very carefully with our partner Google, and we looked at the attendance in some cities, and therefore we will have more people coming to visit us because we have more hotels in Rome, more hotels in Venice, more hotels in Firenze, and therefore they are more likely to buy from our platform. And that's the concept of the marketplace. It's a supermarket with a shopping mall around. The supermarket attracts X number of people. The shopping mall will multiply the attendance by 100, 1,000. That's the idea. And therefore, it's a win-win situation. What I can guarantee you is, first of all, we will take on board only curated hotels with good quality, so we select them. We will choose them not necessarily because they are not competing with Accor hotels. You can compete with Accor hotels. Once you're on board, you will be treated equally, the same way as our hotels. No hidden algorithm, no preference behind our brands when we display the list. Nothing like Booking, which displays hotels only based on how much they pay to Booking and not necessarily on their relevance. So that's what I have to tell you to convince. And it seems to work because in Italy we already signed up to more than 200 hotels.
That's good. My last question for Jan. Again, it's I remember that I think the first or second edition of BTO a few years ago, someone was saying that the GDS model was really dead. While if I see the data that you have published, the GDS model it's up and running and it's feeling well. So what's the future for the GDS?
So this year the GDSs in hotel, at least in the hotel area, will produce 62 million bookings.
62 million, that's a lot.
62 million bookings. You heard Philip say this morning that one of the things that he predicted or couldn't predict correctly was that the four big TMCs on how they conduct corporate business hasn't changed much, and they're as powerful. So whilst the GDSs continue to grow and evolve, getting into acquiring different companies, etc., and bringing their technology into an area of being able to compare online and offline, etc., etc., the GDSs as a shopping mall is still a very, very powerful shopping mall, and we see continuous rise of GDS bookings, at least in the hotel industry.
So they're doing well. David, as an independent little hotel, what I should do to organize my data? Let's say I'm an hotelier, and I am, by the way, which some days I have a folio like the one that you show in your presentation, a lot of software. And one of the big difficulty of an independent hotelier nowadays is to have all the software match and talk to each other, which is a big issue. What shall I do?
Very difficult to answer that in the 25 seconds available.
I say that the one which will answer better to this one and will found a way to have the life of a GM like I am when I'm not organizing BTO easier, will win the game. This is my impression.
I keep repeating myself, but I would go back fundamentally to identifying who is your main consumer, how do they behave within your hotel across the entire travel cycle, and rebuild that infrastructure around that. Follow the KISS principle, keep it simple, and by the law of averages, always kind of go for the kind of the biggest opportunity and kind of avoid those kind of obvious kind of traps that involve lots of manual decision making. Keep it simple, keep it automated.
Keep it simple. Thank you, David Turnbull, Jan Tissera, and Jean-Luc Chretien. Thank you very much.